Hello and welcome back to Clarkenomics. In this video we're going to talk more about supply elasticity, how to calculate it, and how to determine whether or not a firm supply will be most likely elastic or inelastic. So before you can calculate supply elasticity, you have to be able to calculate percentage change. So if you saw the video from demand elasticity about how to calculate percentage change, this is all exactly the same. Just remember new minus old divided by old, and that's going to give you percentage change. So, calculating price elasticity of supply is almost exactly like the formula for calculating price elasticity of demand, except for one little difference. The only little difference being we changed the letter D right here to the letter S. So all you have to do is find the percentage change in quantity supplied and then divide that by the percentage change in the price. And again, delta just means change. Quantity supplied is QS, and P means price. Now, your answers will always come out as a positive number when you do this. This is a little bit different than with demand elasticity. And let's think about why. With supply, there's a positive relationship between price and quantity. So if the price of a good rises, the quantity supplied will rise. If the price of a good falls, the quantity supplied will fall. So either you're always going to come out with two positive numbers for your numerator and for your denominator, or two negative numbers. And if they're positive, fine, the answer is going to be positive. But if you have a negative change in quantity supplied and a negative change in price, those negatives will cancel out and you'll still come out with a positive number. So with price elasticity of demand, we would always take the absolute value, but with price elasticity of supply, we don't have to because we're going to get a positive number no matter what. So for example, let's imagine that the price of a widget was initially $200 and the quantity supplied was $700. Well, when the price of a widget rises to $500, the quantity supplied rises to 1,000, right? It's a positive relationship. When price goes up, quantity supply goes up. So to calculate price elasticity of supply, the first thing I always recommend doing is making a table like this one, where you always start off with the first row being quantity, the second row being price, the first column being new, the second column being old. Because once you plug all these values in, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to figure out what needs to go where. So we're going to start off by getting our percentage change in quantity supplied. There's our new quantity, 1,000, right from there, minus our old quantity, 700, divided by 300, the old quantity, which is 700, and then multiply by that by 100 to get that. Then we just find same thing for price. 500 minus 200 divided by 200 times 100 is 150. So once we have these values, all we now need to do is plug stuff in. Price elasticity of supply is of course equal to percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. So we just take 42.85 divided by 150, and that gives us a price elasticity of supply of 0.29. And that's how you find your answer. One more time, just like with demand, we have to note that direction matters, right? So which one is our new and which one is our old is going to be very important to remember, because if you were to accidentally flip them, you're going to get a very wrong answer. Now, in terms of interpreting price elasticity of supply, this is almost exactly like it was with demand again. If you come out with an answer of greater than 1, we call that price elastic for supply. And what that means is a change in the price changes quantity by a factor of more than 1. So for example, if elasticity were equal to 2, a 25% increase in price will result in a 50% rise in the quantity supplied. Remember, for supply, price and quantity move in the same direction. If the elasticity comes out to be less than 1, then you're going to have it be price inelastic. So a change in price changes quantity by a factor of less than 1. So for instance, if elasticity were 0.5, a 25% increase in price would only result in a 12.5% increase in the quantity supplied. And the last option here is an elasticity of exactly 1. Remember, elasticity can't come out to be less than 0, because if it's demand elasticity, we take the absolute value. And if it's supply elasticity, we're always going to come out with a positive number. So it always has to be equal to something greater than 0, or 1, or more than 1, or between 0 and 1. So if it's unit elastic, that means a change in price changes quantity by a factor of exactly 1. So a 25% increase in price would have a proportional 25% rise in quantity supplied. So That's all pretty much the same as it was for price elasticity of demand. We're just swapping in supply instead and remembering a few other things. Now, in terms of what makes something supply elastic or supply inelastic, this is actually much different than it was for price elasticity of demand. And the reason is you have to think about not what consumers are going to do, you have to think about what producers are going to do. Producers are who we care about when we talk about supply. So, how able is a producer to react to changes in the price of the product that they make? Because we know that high prices make producers want to produce more, and lower prices make producers want to produce less. It's not so much a question of what they want to do for price elasticity of supply. It's more a question of like, what can they do? Like, what factor allows them to increase or decrease their quantity supplied at will? So, the first thing is about availability of inputs. Every product that gets produced uses factors, inputs, to get made. So let's imagine first a good or a product where the inputs are common and they're easy to acquire. So if the company wants to get more of these inputs, it's pretty easy. Well, in that situation, the supply would be very elastic. And a good example of that in the real world would be something like pizza. So a company that makes pizza, let's say the market price of pizza rises, producers of pizza want to make a lot more pizza. Well, the things that they need to make pizza are pretty common. You've got tomato sauce and um, dough and mozzarella and pepperoni. They're not things that are very hard to find. They can easily acquire more of those things and produce more, or they can easily not buy them and produce less. It's very, very flexible, and that's what makes it elastic for supply. They can really easily react to a change in the price. On the flip side, though, something that is inputs that are rare or in fixed quantities make the supply of something less elastic. And a good example of this would be like the flu vaccine. Every year they produce, a certain amount of the flu vaccine, and the things needed to make this are not that easy to find, right? They have to, put the formula together and find the right inputs, and it's not very easy once production has already gone underway to change that. So if the price of flu shots were to go up, they wouldn't necessarily be able to make a lot more of them quickly to respond to that. So if the thing has inputs that are easy to get, companies are better able to adjust their quantity supplied, so giving it a more elastic supply. If something is rare or in fixed quantities, or let's say you rent parking spaces in a parking lot, you can't just beyond a certain point have more parking lot to put the cars in. It's a fixed quantity of input. Stuff like that has a less elastic supply. Or, if you're a diamond miner or you build airplanes, right? The things that you use to produce those things are not very easy to increase or decrease. And so those types of things would have a less elastic supply. But the one big thing that changes this is time. So as a rule, supply is always more elastic over longer periods of time because in the short run, some things are fixed, they can't change. But as you move into longer and longer periods of time, everything becomes more flexible. Everything is flexible in the long run. So, for instance, inputs that were rare or hard to get in the short run, as the time frame expands, might be easier to get. You know, so diamonds originally, let's say you were trying to increase your production of diamonds as a producer. Well, you needed to dig a new mine. In the short run, that's pretty tough, but in the long run, you can do that. Um, so there's lots of ways that over longer periods of time, things become easier to change the quantity supplied of, making them more elastic. A good example is Christmas trees. So Christmas trees take about 10 years to grow to a marketable size, the size that most people want them in their homes. So let's imagine in the short run, there was a big increase in the price of Christmas trees. Well, Christmas tree producers would want to produce and supply a lot more Christmas trees, but they wouldn't necessarily be able to because they have to wait for those trees to grow to the marketable size. So in the short run, Christmas trees are highly inelastic. Those producers cannot increase their quantity supplied corresponding to a change in the price. But as time goes on and we get to the long run, this changes, right? Because in the long run, we're not worried about taking time for the trees to grow because in the long run, trees can grow and we're good. So something like Christmas trees in the short run would be very inelastic for supply, but in the long run would become more elastic for supply. And remember who we're talking about one more time. We're only interested in what producers have to face. When it comes to price elasticity of supply, we're not really interested in what consumers think at all. They don't play any role in this. It's a question of, can producers react to a change in the price of a good. So that's how to calculate price elasticity of supply, and that's how we kind of determine whether or not something is supply elastic or supply inelastic. Thank you for watching.